The word of transmission.
Okay. Now, if it was me, I think I would say to get somebody with diabetes because it's something they can control. It's caused by the food we eat. If that's the truth, what the health people say, the health practitioners say, exactly. It can be genetics, but they say because of the food we eat. Me, when I go, they're always telling me, oh, change your food, change your food. So if I were to discriminate sex, I cannot discriminate anything because people want to be happy. People have to. It's nature. You can't stop people having sex. So if I'm to discriminate me, I'll say, somebody with diabetes is their own fault. Because why are they eating the wrong food? There is a reason for me to discriminate, but nobody discriminates people who are diabetic. But people are busy going over for the people who are, I know some people got it through drugs, but just don't judge. Some are born with HIV. It's it kind of to be born with HIV. Imagine growing up born with it, so I'm not your choice. You come to a age where you want to get, and you try to tell the next person who loves you, and they shun you. How painful is that? It seems wrong. Let's try and understand. If you don't understand how HIV starts, it's nice to talk. It's nice to do your own research. Because you will never get HIV through kissing. You will never get HIV through eating from the same place as you. No, through hugging, maybe. But it is through sexual intercourse. And drugs, people will inject drugs. Because if they don't change the needles, then they're prone to pass on HIV. So they are prone to pass on HIV. So I just want to say, if we want to live in a better world, let's try and empathize. Don't sympathize for living better time, but empathize. Put yourself in their shoes. If it was me, if it was my daughter, if it was my son. Because, like I say, as long as you're sexually active, I promise you one day, somewhere, somehow, you will stand up in post. You might not be the one bringing the HIV, but your husband can bring it. Myself, I know my husband brought it for me. But yeah, who can ask me that? Unless I took my story, unless people ask me, but people assume she's HIV because she's a sex worker. Then that he's HIV because he's gay, which is not it. Nobody will go out hunting for a snake or a lion, but things do happen. So I just want to say happy World to you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Okay, there's a question.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and teaching us. I just want to ask a question about how you were able to move from the point of diagnosis, how you're able to go through those challenges to the point of getting to become a speaker, a motivator, trying to destigmatize HIV. How did you transition? What led to this?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. Right, last I was diagnosed, I was pregnant. And my first visit to the gyno, my gyno told me that you have to terminate this child because he or she will be born HIV positive, which was contrary to what I was told by my consultant. My consultant told me 90% the child will be negative. And there I was at the crossroads. Now, staying in front of my gyno, he's telling me, you have to abort, because that's the best solution for you. And I'm in a foreign land, no mother, no sister, no nothing. So my mind went back to Africa, seeing those kids dying of HIV, seeing people dying with AIDS, not even HIV, AIDS. Then I thought, okay, I want my child to be like that. And who is going to be helping me? Because my partner said she wants no AIDS. So I just, they gave me 5 minutes, make a decision. Decided now it's allowed in UK to terminate a child. He went out, gave me 5 minutes again. What do? I have no other choice. I just chose to terminate my baby. So that's how it started. After terminating my baby, I started everything. I don't know how to put it. I could not stay looking at a pregnant woman. I just felt like I'll go and travel with that woman. I didn't want to see one pregnant, and I could not eat, I could not, because I was now blaming myself. I've killed someone. What if I just let it go and see what happens? And it was too late. So I ended up going for counseling. I was counseling for what, 4 weeks, which was my starting point of healing. It really helped me with counseling. So from counseling, I joined the support group where I was living. So the support group, that's why we met people, different people, and the staff was very nice. And you see everybody there looks healthy. Now I'm thinking, is this thing real? You know, Africa, I think all of us from Africa, you know, when somebody's got AIDS, wow, they look like film, they are this, and you can tell by just looking. But here you cannot tell who is who because of the medication. So when I went to the support group, everybody there was looking healthy. So I started going and listening to stories. Until, like I said in my video, I'm very this for myself, for my country. And she says, I'm being positive for 20 years. I just looked at her and I'm thinking, wow, 20 years, you look at her, she looks good. Then I'm going out and I'm thinking, I don't believe this. So after the meeting, I went to the lady, I said, my sister, tell me the truth. Are you being paid with this organization to say that you're positive? And she said, no. Why should I? Really? How can you manage to come to this age? Said, you know what? All I do is take my meds. And by then, people were taking a handful of meds. It was still many. And I said, is that all? She said, yes. Nobody knows. So the only people who know are my closest friends. But otherwise, my family, they don't even know. I don't need to disclose to anyone because why should I when I know I'm taking my medication? And that day I made a vote to myself. I said, if God, you make me live to 20 years, like this woman, I'm going to help the world, change the world, whatever they think about HIV. And that's what it made me. So from there, I started volunteering, started doing fundraising, HIV thing. But I've done all sorts, you can think, because then they started the program of positive speaker, because I was in Manchester. We call it positive speaking. We used to go out to students, nurses, even companies with the invite to say our story. So it was then when I started saying my story, and everybody after would come to me, they would hug me, they would say, wow, well done, well done. My CEO would say, you know you've got the gifts. You can be an activist. You can say, I said, I'm not sure, I said, you can talk. You have the gift. So why don't you use your gifts to make a change? So that was when I said, okay, if that's the way, I just started then. So even new people would come, they would be all ready to me for peer mentoring. And up to now, I'm a peer mentor with everybody can tell me. I've made a lot of change in people's lives. Not that I'm posting, but I know people come, they can say, if it wasn't you, because I'm always smiling. And as they were talking here, my friends, they said, you are brave, we can't. I said, well, no, I'm going to hide behind each other. Let's say your story rather than anybody else saying for you. You understand? So it's about that confidence, and it's not everyone who can do it. But me, because I think I can go to training. Some people need only 6 months. God has been faithful for me to be 22 years HIV positive. And nobody can tell unless I open my mouth to tell you. So why should I not save the next person, especially the generation Z? They are so lucky. We've got PrEP now, where you make a choice to say, oh, today I'm going lucky. Let me take my PrEP. That's the choice you make. There is PrEP. After every your night out, you realize, oh, I made a mistake, I said to someone I don't know. Go check your PrEP. That's an advantage. There is condom. There is the testing itself. So what else do you want? So on top of that, if I tell them a story that me, I never had those things. If I had those things, I don't think I would have HIV positive. I could have prevented. But we're not so like that because of the research now, we've got lots of things. So people should not now just see HIV like any other illness. There's nothing different with blood pressure, and it's just same. Nobody wants to have blood pressure, nobody wants to have cancer. It's nobody wants to have cancer. So that was it.
Any other question? Let's put that together. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That was great. That was a very inspirational talk. So thank you so much for the great work. Thank you so much. And yeah, Dr. Motolani is also here as well. So he's going to give a talk at some point on mental health and HIV, as well as Smita grants from Mahis of the NHS. So you're all welcome. Let's put us together. Thank you. You're all welcome. So thank you so much. So I'll just talk a little bit on the theme. If I call Dr. Motolani, we'll take a break at some point. There's some food and drinks, so we can take something before we continue. Okay, so I'm going to talk very briefly on HIV prevention in Scotland post-COVID. HIV in Scotland post-COVID. So my name is Kinnaird. I have a medical background and I'm also a public health practitioner, the chief executive of ASDO. So ASDO was set up to help Africans and also people in Scotland as well to support their health and educational development. But a lot of people would finish their courses, they'll finish their master's and PhD, and then they'll say, oh, they have no experience. So when expats leave the UK and they go to Africa, they call them expatriates. Or when expatriates come from Africa to the UK, they call them migrant workers. So that was all right. So what a platform for Africans to study their courses on health and international development. They can be able to volunteer, they can be able to use their skills and be able to make an impact, positive impact, both in Scotland and also in Africa. So people can volunteer, go to ASDO.org and you can .uk, ASDO.org.uk, and you can volunteer. So just talking about HIV prevention post-COVID, I'm going to look at from a global health perspective. So did a lot of research. I had about 66 slides. I had to cut them down. Next slide, please. But there's a lot of work that has been done. So with the COVID, many of us were impacted by COVID. There was a lot of disruption of services, a lot of shifting of funding to deal with the pandemic, which is a very acute pandemic. But from my perspective, the AIDS have been around for a very long time, and we've had a lot of strategies that were used to tackle HIV. And those strategies can also be used for other pandemics such as COVID. But a lot of disruptions, a lot of services have to be virtual, social distances have to be kept, and all that. And also testing tended to have gone down. Next slide. So before the pandemic, Scotland had a lot of impact in terms of harm reduction and public awareness, but this appears to be reducing, as well as funding. There's that implication, that perception that HIV is no longer a problem, so we should just forget about it. I was speaking to somebody, invited them for the program, and they were like, I thought it's gone, it no longer exists. It's no longer a problem. So there's that perception, but we need to keep the work going so that the success of the last few years is not wasted. Next slide. So as I said earlier, a lot has been a decline in preventive measures, and that's why this program has been set up as well, to try to build that awareness and continue the momentum so that we don't stop raising awareness. Next slide. So there are a lot of public health innovations post-COVID, a lot of digital health interventions, a lot of consulting has been undertaken online. Things like attend anywhere, so people don't really need to come to the clinic, like pre-COVID, at-home testing as well, and also long-acting injectable antiretroviral therapy. So people don't have to take they have the option of injections rather than just the oral tablets. So people that have challenges with adherence, for example, can just take the injection and the drug would work. So next. But there are still some social determinants that are affecting access to antiretroviral therapy, economic inequality in Africa and also in Scotland, stigma, as Agnes said earlier, and also even health, stigma even in the healthcare system. For part of my research, I did some research on access to antiretroviral therapy in resource-poor settings. I was in a hospital and a healthcare worker was shouting at a patient, oh, like this is all right. I had to raise a complaint. So even in the hospital, there's still stigma. In the healthcare system, there's still stigma. So there needs to be awareness to the healthcare workers that this is not right. Because when people come to the hospital, they come to the healthcare system, they're coming to receive support and help and not to be stigmatized. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a study in London that shows that people are still experiencing stigma even within the healthcare system by healthcare workers. Next slide. So people have acquired HIV in 2023 compared to the 1980s. So about 31 million people are receiving antiretroviral therapy. So there's a lot of progress compared to the target of 39 million. Sub-Saharan Africa has had a lot of success. So that even the life expectancy has now increased from 56.3 years to 61.1 years. Next slide. So there's a lot of success. Globally, 39.9 million people are living with HIV. 1.3 million people got affected in 2023. And said earlier, 30.7 million people are on ARVs compared to the target of 39 million. Next slide. So how is it transmitted? As I said, through sex, heterosexual, men having sex with men, intravenous drug use, through infected blood transfusion, vertical transmission from mother to child, and also through breastfeeding as well. Next slide. But there's a lot of impact that has been made. A lot of impact has been made. You can see access to antiretroviral therapy has rapidly been increasing over the years, and we're globally, and we're having gradually reaching the 2025 targets. So there's a lot of reasons to be, to celebrate. We can use that word because a lot of work is going on. Next slide. But HIV stigma still continues to be a problem. And with my doctoral research, I did some work on stigma, and I found out that there were different levels of stigma. There was a self-stigma where people feel everybody knows their diagnosis and they're kind of like depressed, anxious, finding it difficult to even access the ARVs. And that's why mental health support is very, very important. Familial stigma, people are being stigmatized by their own family members. Some marriages are being destroyed. Women experience domestic violence when they disclose their diagnosis. So it's a big problem because you would expect that the families will support patients, but often they are being stigmatized. And then even in the society, people are refused access to jobs, scholarships because of HIV diagnosis, which is not right. So we need to put an end to this stigma. And then even in the hospitals, we have what I call organizational stigmatization, where the organizational arrangements inadvertently stigmatizes the patient. For example, having a separate center, anybody still walking to that center if their confidentiality is lost. So this is a form of organizational stigma. And then institutional stigma, people, not being allowed access to jobs, bank accounts, simply because of their HIV status. So there are a lot of legislation that being brought across to protect people with HIV/AIDS. Next slide. But as you can see, globally, the number of AIDS deaths has been gradually falling. As more people are getting on ARVs, the number of deaths has fallen. So the blue bars talks about the number of people who have been on ARVs. It has been gradually increasing. Globally, as it has been increasing, the amount of deaths have been going down. So this is from UNAIDS. Next slide, please. But the people at risk, a lot of people that are at risk of HIV, commercial sex workers, men that have sex with men, people who inject drugs, are being criminalized in a lot of parts of the world. So this is also, and also people that transmit the virus after they know their diagnosis are being criminalized in a lot of parts of the world, including the UK. So this is helping to also exacerbate the stigma. So that's why UNAIDS is talking about decriminalizing of this activity so that people can be targeted through various techniques and strategies like PrEP. So some other aspects are going to talk about PrEP in more details, but I'm not going to go, that far. Next slide. But in places like Eastern Europe and Northern Central Asia, we're having an increase in new HIV infections. I think this could be partly due to the war in Ukraine as well, could be driving this. Or what we're seeing is that there's an increase in new infections. Next. Similarly, in the Middle East and North Africa, we're seeing a slight increase as well. Next slide. But another part of the world, like Western and Central Europe, North America, there's a decline. So there's some progress being made, as well as the parts of West Africa as well. Next one. So globally, the new infections are going down, the number of new deaths are going down. So there's that temptation to now relax and say, okay, it's all sorted. But if the strategies, if the funding is drawn back and the strategies are reduced, there's that risk that the infections could rise up again. So which is why we are raising this awareness that the work should still continue. Next slide. So just basically what I've said earlier, the number of people that are on ARVs are increasing and the number of AIDS deaths are going down. Next slide. So we need more preventive efforts targeting people that have sex with men, commercial sex with workers, and also the general population as well, because everybody is at risk. Next slide. And then there's some studies that suggest that male circumcision also provides some form of protection against HIV transmission. So that is another strategy that should be advocated. Next slide. And then there's some research as well on some antiretroviral rings that lead the vaginal rings for women. So women can use that and be able to protect themselves against HIV and infection. Next slide. But it's still undergoing some tests. So there are a lot of HIV jargons you hear of things like HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, PrEP, that's pre-exposure prophylaxis. And when we're in school, when you go to study, we're going for PrEP, or it means something as pre-exposure prophylaxis. PrEP is post-exposure prophylaxis. ARV is antiretroviral therapy. So there's some terms that you would hear. And on the slide, so we're going to share that at the end of next slide. So HIV was the first cases were reported in 1981, and then in 1983, some French scientists, François Baricinosi in France, Austria, in America, were able to identify the virus and it was officially named AIDS in 1986. So there's been a lot of development. ARVs dissolved in 1987, Truvada in 2012, and now we have long-acting antiretroviral therapy. One of the progress at the moment is the use of PrEP, which is people who are HIV negative but are exposed, maybe they might to someone that is HIV positive, can take the antiretrovirals and prevent infection. And also people that are on ARVs as well, that are undetectable, the recent research suggests that they can't pass the HIV virus to their partners. So there's a lot of progress that they made. Next slide. But these results globally, as I said earlier, all over the world, you can see there's been a reduction in new infections, but in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, there's been a rise. Next slide. So in Scotland, why is it important? In Scotland, a lot of work has been done with PrEP, and there's been reduction in new HIV infections, but a lot of people coming into Scotland from other countries who are already on ARVs and are bringing the infection with them. And for the first time in 2023, the prevalence in heterosexuals, the new infection in heterosexuals exceeded that in the gay and bisexual community. So that's in 2023. So that shows that we still need to continue with the awareness. Next slide. And a lot of people are still being identified very, very late. About 15%, 20 out of 126 are being identified very late. If people identify the infections early and they are on ARVs, they're able to live a normal life. Even life expectancy is now considered to be better than other chronic diseases. Next slide. So this is from Public Health Scotland. So PrEP has led to a massive decrease. A lot of work has been done with men that have sex with men, and has led to a rapid decrease in HIV incidence among gay, bisexual, and men that have sex with men. Next slide. But following COVID, there was a drastic reduction in tests from about 70,000 down to about 20,000 tests were being done per annum, and this is gradually rising following COVID. Next slide. And as I said earlier, you can see the green line, going up. So that green line is showing the number of HIV diagnoses from outside Scotland coming into Scotland. Among the heterosexual community, sexual intercourse between men and women, for the first time, is rising above that in the gay, bisexual, and men that have sex with men. And you can see for people that use drugs, that inject drugs, it has been fairly stable, but it's been actually going down. Next slide. Yes, next slide, please. So in terms of ethnicity, for the first time, as I said earlier, is increasing among the heterosexual community. And among the heterosexual community, about 53% of African or Black Caribbean heritage, white 32 are white. Next slide. And yes, the number of diagnoses from outside Scotland, like I said earlier, is increasing among the heterosexual. Next slide. And this is the proportion of people diagnosed or living with HIV receiving ARVs. So you can see men that have sex with men, heterosexuals, people with who inject drugs, PWID, and then the people that are unknown. And in Scotland, more of males than females tend to be living with HIV. Next. So what are some of the global insights? So I think we need to learn from the positive things that are happening globally, because Scotland is in a global village. Community-led initiatives in other parts of the world have been very, very useful in tackling HIV. Ensuring that there are public awareness campaigns with the community. Then having a multi-sectoral approach, because HIV affects housing, it affects the economy, it affects different phases of life. It affects education. So having more of a multi-sectoral approach, rather than it being seen as a health issue, but as a social issue, and involving education, involving housing, involving social services, involving civil society, NGOs, very, very useful in tackling HIV, as well as stigma reduction strategies. And one of the main ways is raising awareness, having legislation that protect against discrimination, and there is awareness, even in the different policies, the equality policies, ensuring that the stand against discrimination of people living with HIV. Next slide. So what are some of the recommendations? Expanding access to at-home and community testing, because the more people know about the HIV testing status and our medication, the less the chances of transmission. Enhancing digital and remote services, addressing the social determinants of health. So it's not just seen as a health issue, but as a social issue. So things like politics have a major role to play. Things like religion has a major role to play. People are not discriminated even in religious organizations. Charities have a big role to play. So it's not just seen as a health issue. And then also promoting long-acting PrEP options for people that have challenges with health. Next slide. So in conclusion, we are facing new challenges post-COVID. A lot of work has been done. There's a lot of success. But we need to continue to be committed to innovation and inclusivity and accessibility. So Scotland has one of the greatest advantages, one of the great resources, and the wherewithal to see that HIV targets for 2030 are met, and HIV infection is eliminated in Scotland. Scotland can be the first country to do that. And thank you all for your support. Thank you. Are there any questions? I'll call on Dr. Motolani to talk next on mental health. If there are no questions. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the great and intelligent presentation. I would like to ask, in what ways have you been able to see the statistics or data in Scotland of the Black and white ratio living with HIV, and how you can bridge the gap in various initiatives as a CSO, in every way you think, to create more community awareness, engagement, and impact? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so there's some data from units that have some information, but most of the data came from Public Health Scotland. So there's a website on their website, and there's also a report from 2023. So that's where we're going to get a lot of the information. The main thing is to raise awareness, but a lot of people are not really aware of the changes or the trends. So I think what we can do is to raise awareness, like organizing seminars, physically, online, and developing newsletters, sharing on social media, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, YouTube, just letting people be aware of the challenges of HIV and the support that is provided, how people can safeguard their health, and also how people can be involved in stopping stigma, to prevent stigma. So it's very, very important that stigma is addressed in the healthcare system and in the community. When people cannot get HIV by shaking somebody's hand, by hugging them, by hugging people, by going to the toilets, so you need to be able to show love and care. So thank you so much. So I'm going to call on Dr. Motolani. She's going to talk about mental health challenges. Let's put hands together as she comes forward. We're going to be talking about mental health challenges and HIV and what can be done to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me, Dr. Kingsley. My name is Dr. Motolani Oyemide. I'm an international trained medical doctor, and I practice in the mental health space and also in the social care space in Scotland currently. I've been a various speaker in various international conferences locally in my home country and internationally. So that's just a brief introduction about me. I particularly specialize in family medicine and mental health. And I'm here to share some of my thoughts with you on strategies to maximize your well-being, irrespective of what you may be going through in your mind or in your body. So it's like general. I'm not just going to cone it down to HIV, but I'm going to cone it down to strategies you can engage in to ensure maximal well-being in your body and mind. And as a way of introduction, I would want to just hone into mental health definition by the World Health Organization. It's a very simple definition, and it says your mental health is your ability to work productively and fruitfully, is your ability to fulfill your potential, is your ability to contribute to your community, and your ability to cope with the normal stress of life. We'll all agree as adults that these 4 key points by the World Health Organization is something we can relate with. And so if you notice anyone that may have a deficit in one of those 4 points, the ability to cope with the normal stress of life, the ability to work productively and fruitfully, the ability to realize your potentials, and your ability to contribute to your community. If you notice anyone with a deficit, the person may be struggling with their mental well-being, and it's important we know these are ways we can help people. And so to my slides, it's just like a few points because I have just 20 minutes as I was told. It's important we know that for longevity as people, we must try our possible best to engage in understanding how our body and mind works. Mentally, it is known and worldwide and in the mental health space that the body and mind works together. You cannot separate anyone from the other. And in the event of a diagnosis, most times in any aspect of well-being, whether an anxiety disorder, a depressive illness, when it comes to the mental health space, or even physically, hypertension, diabetes, being overweight, and other chronic illnesses, we know that the first instinct or the first reaction for every individual will be fear. Am I right or wrong? You'll be afraid, yeah. So, and that comes from the mind, and it can also aggravate the impact it can have on the body. So it's important we know that the mental health, the body and mind works together for optimal well-being and longevity. And my number 1 strategy for maintaining longevity and well-being is understanding. Understanding is something that we must get from knowing, getting knowledge, and we can get from community awareness. So this understanding is something that is key to allay worries and anxiety, irrespective of any diagnosis, whether in the body or in the mind. And what does understanding entails? It entails understanding what is the causation. In many illness states, in many diagnoses medically, there are causations of various illnesses. They could be viruses, they could be bacteria, they could be from the fungi, even from the molds that come up in our home space if condensation is not well managed. So understanding what is the causation
And in the case of the mental health space, understanding why am I feeling anxious? What's my trigger? Why have I gotten to the extent of seeking help or treatment from the NHS or from a therapist? So understanding the conversation with allay anxiety. The next thing is, how can I get help? That is treatment. Because these two things will help us understand that when you know, it relieves you of so much worries. Do you agree with me? When you know what is wrong with me, what is happening to me, it will relieve your worries. And I would go with so many quotations from books I've read that most cause of worries is a lack of understanding or knowledge. So what I don't know, just like fear of the unknown, fear of the future, we really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so that's why most people may be afraid of, oh, what's going to be. But the most important thing is understanding where you are and what you can control. And in that way, you can then move forward to know what next to do. So the first thing, that's one strategy I want every one of us to know, irrespective of living with a chronic illness or not living with a chronic illness. We must work towards getting understanding. The next thing is support. And support can be varied. Support can be from family, it can be from your friends, it can be from your spouse, it can be from the community, groups and services. And so it's important we understand that we cannot do life alone. Because loneliness on its own, that can cause fear, would cause a ripple effect on the human body, on the human mind, will lead to more distress, and then can lead to death. And so it's important we understand the essence of support from groups, from services within our locality, within Scotland, within various communities we belong to. Search, ask questions, and these ways of getting support can be physical from the NHS website, from going to see your GP, from seeking services online. Physical is one way. You can walk in therapies, ask questions. Mental, you can actually seek therapy, ask questions, find support groups. That can also help you to seek support. Psychologically, spiritually, it is endless. You can seek support from your spiritual society, from the church, from the mosque, from whatever religion or beliefs you have. You can seek support from your social community. You can ask questions and seek support from your social community, including peer support. So you could join a group in seeking wellness. And support is something we know when we have more understanding of our triggers. What do you want? Who are you? Understanding so much about yourself, and that will lead me to my next strategy, which is self-management. In understanding yourself, you are able to manage yourself better. And what does self-management involve? Self-management is being self-aware, understanding who you are, your emotions, who are you, what triggers me, how do you feel? So this is one part we must understand, self-awareness. Then this will help you to understand what do you want out of life. And that can give you some level of hope in order to try to live. What do you want out of life? What do I want? Who am I? It's important we understand that in managing self, we cannot put away self-awareness. We cannot put away emotional regulation, understanding how you feel and how you can manage yourself on a daily basis. And you cannot put away things like your goals that will drive you, that will give you hope. The next one is ventilation. That's another strategy. Ventilation is a way of solving problems. And it can be like talking to your friend, coming to your community center, talking to someone. It can be as little as giving a call to a friend or a family. Ventilation is a way of airing your thoughts so they don't become rumination, where you begin to overthink, think all over, and then it can lead to various mental health negative outcomes like anxiety and depression. So this is another strategy we can engage for well-being. Another one is self-compassion. The first speaker spoke about ways to destigmatize things. You first have to learn to show yourself compassion, irrespective of what you are going through. And what does self-compassion entail? It's obvious that most of us would go through phases in life where there will be downturns. Life is not like a linear thing where everything is stable and well balanced. There will be ups and downs. So it's important as individuals that we know that showing yourself compassion is about understanding where you are. It's okay as a human to be down, to make mistakes, or to have failures. It doesn't mean that you are inadequate. It's just showing yourself what advice would you give to a friend going through what you are going through? those are ways to show yourself some self-compassion. And the reason why all these things are about the self, SELF, in these strategies is because you are the one, you have more relationship with yourself than anyone would. So it's important to know what is wrong with you, how to care for yourself before you can then move to seek help. And that's why self-compassion is one thing we must try and practice as individuals, irrespective of whatever challenges or illnesses we may be going through. Another one is self-care. As you understand, people may go through diagnosis where they just become sad, they cannot do anything for themselves, even take a shower, take a walk, because the challenges have overwhelmed their body and mind. But in self-care, it's about doing the little bit of what will make you happy in that day, such as taking a warm bath, taking a shower, going for a cuppa, going to the cafe, anything that will make you happy and intentional about yourself. Please practice it daily. It could be about putting up a nice dress, putting up a good makeup, anything. And self-care is something that is not selfish, but it's telling yourself and your mind that you matter. And the reasons for all this is because once you begin to practice some of these strategies, you will optimize a balanced hormone in your body system, because the interplay of hormone balance is as a result of how you feel, how your body is doing, and how your mind is doing. So in maximizing your mind well-being, we need to practice some of these strategies, irrespective of whatever challenges we're going through in our body and in our mind. Another thing is self-gratitude. Are you grateful for who you are? Do you, show yourself gratitude for things you've done in life, challenges you've overtaken? I personally, would not usually, see things like, oh, I need to be here, or I need to be at this height in life. We may have that kind of, for those that are of a type A personality, high achievers, you want to do things. But in learning self-gratitude, what I found out is that you need to give yourself that, you need to thank yourself for some things you've achieved and some, things you've been able to pull through physically. Just like the first speaker spoke, the fact that she's been able to do well, her body has been able to take her through 22 years and she's thriving. Self-gratitude is thanking yourself. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, my body. Thank you, my mind. Thank you for doing so well. That's self-gratitude. All these ways, all these strategies, they release good hormone balance within your body. And that's why they are strategies we must practice. Another one we must know about is positive reinforcement. This is like when you're going through any challenge in the body or in the mind, you need to look at ways that you can actually give yourself some kind of rewards in terms of, okay, I'm able to, irrespective of my challenge, I'm able to probably do A, B, C this week or achieve this goal. Your reward may be as little as taking yourself out for coffee, buying yourself something from the charity shop. And what it does in positive reinforcement is it gives you a good dopamine high in a part of your brain called the reward center. And this helps you to live through another day to be more productive. So in understanding this aspect of well-being, we must know that we should not be too hard on ourselves as humans. We should not be too hard on ourselves, irrespective of the past, because most humans will say experiences will lead to various narratives, and this will lead to belief systems. So experience of life, let's say, oh, I grew up in a foster home, or my parents left me, mistakes of our parents that have become our experiences, and then they now become your self-talk or your narrative. And then this becomes your belief system, and it then forms a lens through which you see the world, you see people, or you even see yourself. So in practicing positive reinforcement, when you're able to pull through each day, pull through each month, pull through each year, you give yourself that balance of hormone from the brain. You give your spirit, your soul, that balance of strength to be able to move on. And that's something we must know. It's a very good strategy for longevity. Last but not the least, I would like to hone down finally to what is called mindfulness, mindfulness, not mindfulness, mindfullness. So mindfulness is the ability for you to live in the present moment, to live in the present, and not being overburdened by so many worries, challenges, because in essence, we have what we call the locus of control. There are things we cannot control in life, and there are things we can control. Examples of things we cannot control are such like the natural disasters can happen in any country, wars, hurricanes, tsunamis, flooding, just the one that just happened in Spain. It cannot be controlled, even if there are so many efforts in the international community to curtail some of these things. Other things we can't control in life are things that happen to people with diagnoses. As Agnes shared her story, that a diagnosis, there's not anything she can control in herself. So understanding the aspect of being mindful, living in present moment, in addition to all the strategies I've mentioned, is a way of actually cutting yourself some slacks, giving yourself the understanding of what can I control, what can I not control, and staying in the middle. Because once you overflog yourself about, oh, I feel I should control everything, it can lead to mental illnesses. And once you actually are on the aspect of, I don't want to do anything, I don't care, it can also lead to laxity, an unfulfilled life. So having that balance of there are things I can control, there are things I cannot control as a human, and living in the middle of that line can help you thrive and move forward onto longevity. Another aspect of mindfulness are like everything that has to do with spirituality, yoga, prayers, anything that calms you, anything that helps you appreciate the present moment. That is what we call mindfulness. It's not the absence of challenges. It's not the absence of illnesses. It's not the absence of the situation in various economies, but it's just the aspect of appreciating your life, living in the present moment, and building enough positive hormones in the human body that can help you live longer. And in conclusion, I want us to understand that anytime there's a dissonance or a problem when the body and mind is not in tune, it always leads to illnesses, either of the body or the mind. So it's important we understand that many things are important in these strategies I've mentioned. I started by mentioning understanding. I started by going into self-compassion, self-care. I mentioned self-gratitude, support. I mentioned positive reinforcement and mindfulness. Because once there's a dissonance in the body and the mind, it will lead to either a serious physical illness or a serious mental illness, irrespective of your challenge or any current illness the person is dealing with. So it's important we have this understanding today on this World AIDS Day that you are very important in your choice of well-being, to try to live long, to enjoy life, to live daily. You are very important, and you should not underestimate the power of the mind on the body and the power of the body on the mind. They work together. It's important we practice strategies that will help us to live long, that will help us to thrive. And when we're able to do this, we are able to help another person. Thank you for listening.
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Presentation. I just wanted to ask how much stigma is associated with mental health.
How much stigma is associated?
Thank you for your question. So basically, stigmatization globally stems from lack of understanding. And that's why the first way to stigmatize is to kill ignorance by educating people and creating more awareness. You cannot influence how people will think or feel or behave towards you. But with the understanding you have, you can only have that control of yourself. And with mental illness in Africa, though in Scotland, I've seen people saying they still feel stigmatized silently because, in the way people that know about their diagnosis in the social care industry treat them because they've taken some form of autonomy from them in making decisions for themselves. So stigmatization in the developed countries may be more silent, but in underdeveloped countries like where I come from, it's very vast. Because number one, there's the belief, as I mentioned, the ability of your experiences whether your parents or your general experience in life, to lead to a self-talk or narrative and lead to a belief system. So the belief system is most of the mental illness may be spiritual, and nobody may understand the reality of mental illnesses and illnesses that develop from the brain due to electrical and chemical imbalances, whether from substance use, whether from things like rumination, where people become depressed. It is a brain chronic illness. And that is why education is one way to destigmatize it. Nobody, I would say, mental illness also has a high level of stigmatization because the first thing you see is the behavioral change. And once you see a behavioral change, everybody is like, what's this? So that's why mental illness has so much stigmatization. Anyone with other illnesses can be quiet and just walk by because their behaviors are still okay. Everyone with even maybe a diagnosed depressive illness can just walk quietly, may have this downward look, looking down on the floor, which is associated with people living with depression. They may not look at it when they are walking because of the depressed feeling. So they are looking down and walking. But you may just feel the person doesn't feel like greeting you. But with mental illness, the sudden first episodes, or the ones where it happens in front of everyone. For example, if I on this stage suddenly just pull down my clothes and start walking, what would you do? You would be scared. Even everyone, you may not call the NHS. Oh, please, can you just come 911? Everyone, that is a form of what? And I can bet you that 60% of us here may become scared, or you may feel like, what's wrong? Before it comes to the knowledge that there's a mental illness, it may be a feedback from the doctor and everyone that probably may know, people that have experiences or people that know that mental illness can come with sudden behavioral changes. So it is really like a stigmatized industry that there's still a lot of education going on, awareness going on to make sure people understand that it's a brain disease, it's a chronic illness, and all the support needed to ensure people live stable lives. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And what about like journaling? I know it's implicit in what you said. What do you think about journaling?
Thank you. So regarding journaling is the ability for you to get a book, whether it's a gratitude journal or just any book you have in your, and put down your thoughts, your feelings, and express how you feel on a daily basis. Even when you feel you behave in a way that is not in tune with your values or who you want to be, you can use journaling as a way to regulate your emotion, understand your triggers, overcome challenging thoughts. Maybe somebody that has a broken relationship and there's just no way you go closure. So you can use journaling as a way to express those thoughts, those emotions. And for people that have very bad relationships, they can call it thought dumping. So you could tell those thoughts and dump it like as a closure to the end of that relationship, for example. And for people that are trying to become more self-aware, it's a way of self-reflection, journaling. So you can look at your thoughts every week and what you've expressed. And it helps you to really, it's a way of letting out stress or distress, and also a way of creating more understanding of yourself. So journaling is something you must understand if you want to practice it or not. Some people can do it on their phone, and every day it prompts you and tells you, oh, you visited, for example, my own journal will prompt me and say, oh, you went to somewhere in maybe Princess Street, and then that's like prompting me to write an experience. Or I have a gratitude journal. I personally practice journaling. So I have a gratitude journal that tells me, to reflect. After I've reflected, it goes to what are your challenges, then it tells me what are your goals, and then it tells me what are you grateful for. So that's what I practice, and it really helps me kind of, understand my journey in every of my goals and achievements. Thank you. Okay, two more questions.
Two questions, I'm hoping to be short. The first one is, I'm still trying to understand if mental health is the same as mental illness, is there any difference? And secondly, what's the role of therapy in mental health?
Thank you. Yeah, so mental health, just as the way we have physical health, as you see me standing and I look healthy, I may not be mentally healthy. So mental health, everyone has mental health, and everyone has physical health, and every other aspect of health that is emotional, psychological, financial, social. So health, that's health. Mental illness is when there is a breakdown in your ability to function psychologically, emotionally, or even socially. So that can be like the beginning of where people are on what we call the mental health spectrum. There's a spectrum where people are either healthy, healthy, coping, struggling, or becoming mentally ill. So if people are, for example, struggling so much, it may start maybe the beginning of a diagnosable mental illness. So it's important you understand that everyone has mental health, and everyone may get into the side of the spectrum where they are struggling. And what coping does is support. When you have a lot of support, people can transition from struggling to coping. And that's the bridge of healthcare, the NHS, therapy, spiritual communities. All those things can bridge the gap. So people can not struggle and go into coping. But when people struggle for so long, there are no solutions, or mental illnesses that can result with overuse and overdose of substances that are like recreational substances. They can become mentally ill almost immediately. And that would lead to diagnosis that would need care of the health system, whether admission, treatment, and they can then transition even to become to cope. So the spectrum is such that people can transition. Somebody else may be healthy, may lose a loved one, and just transition either to struggling or mentally ill. So the spectrum is anyone in their lifetime. You can go in and out of the spectrum. And that's why it's not a linear call for anybody through life. Understanding, education, community, it's something that we all must engage in.
Take the last question for this section, and then you can always pick up the end.
Thank you for the presentation. Dr. Davis, do you have any reflections on how we put health in a post-COVID world? We're all using far more online activity, and we're trying to promote mental health in the community. You know, just the challenges of that, given that AI is soon becoming.
Thank you. So actually, post-COVID, because there have been changes in various ways, the economies have tried and the whole workspace, digital well-being or health and the digital space has skyrocketed to being a way of living. But the outcome of what has been noticed is a lot of diagnosis of what's called loneliness, and a lot of diagnosis of this FOMO syndrome, the fear of missing out syndrome, where people have basically on their phone. The average person will touch their phone just 15 minutes after they wake up in the morning. So if you do statistics, how many people will touch their phone first thing in the morning before taking a cup bath? Or taking a cup of tea, or so the average person, even globally, will touch their phone first thing in the morning, the first 15 minutes. So in as much as there's a lot of advantage for everything, there's an advantage and disadvantage. The disadvantage are now the problems of loneliness becoming so much more in people between the ages of 16 to 35. Initially, loneliness was more in the elderly. But the elderly now, they are actually in Scotland. I think the elderly people are even trying, because on my street they are telling me they are going for coffee. They are even trying that the younger ones, because they are more involved in community. But the younger ones are more involved on the social media space, which is virtual interface. It's not physical. And the truth is that when there is physical interface, there are a lot of good hormones that are released in the human body. Virtually, we're not resting when we're touching our phones. Because go to Miami on the phone, from Miami or back in Scotland, everything you look at on the phone, I'm sure that is not within Scotland. You are looking at everywhere all over the world. And the brain is not ready. Your brain is they almost released in the body are so bad, but we don't know that. Most of us may not know. When you tell people to take a rest, on bed, but they are on their phone and they are like browsing the internet and they are everywhere. But these are not releasing the hormones because the real rest, which the elderly will take, either read a book, take a cup of coffee, relax and watch something, not your phone. So the reality is still that the advantage is a fast-paced world of digital health, the AI, but the disadvantage is still more because the loneliness statistic is more towards the younger generation. So it's not really beneficial. But the understanding is for you to practice strategies that will help you stay mindful even in the moment, that will release positive hormones, and for you to not be afraid of missing out. Because I think most times the younger generation, the fear of missing out syndrome makes everyone want to be on their phone. What's happening on Instagram? What's happening on Twitter? What's happening on Snapchat? And that's not really healthy for the human body. And this has been more during post-COVID.
That was great. Wow, that was very, very fantastic questions. I think on level of stigma, I was just reflecting that on the risk of global stigma, both from HIV and from mental illness, but there's also still, I think, a potential like stigma reduction studies are what in mental health to be applied in HIV and vice versa. Yeah, so very impressive. Thank you so much for that talk and thanks for the questions. So please don't rush. We're almost finished. We're going to have African RSVP, which means rice and stew, very plenty. So it's going to be at the end. It's going to be live. It's not going to be digital. So yes. So the NHS is here as well. So I want to recognize Jonathan Santana. That's going to come very soon to give us a talk. Linda Patton as well. And Claire Chambers. Professor Luke family, I'm sure I'll mention the conference somewhere. Well, you're all welcome. So without further ado, they're going to give a talk and a presentation. I'm going to call on Jonathan first. Very good friends. We're very long time. And thank you so much for listening.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. I would probably not use the mic because I think my voice would be good enough. Yeah. Kingsley, thank you so much for inviting NHS. I've known Kingsley for quite a long time, and once in a while we bump into each other, and 2 weeks ago he got in touch and he wanted NHS to talk about HIV and on World AIDS Day. And the focus is really, as we commemorate World AIDS Day, we remember those who have died and those who are unable to make it in the success of the current treatment we have. I reached out to my line manager, Smita Grant, who is a NHS NAHIS manager. And my role within a NHS and NAHIS is really linking Africans into services. What we do is listen to the issues and needs of Africans. We link people in various services. We support professionals to support patients. We advocate on behalf of the patients. And at times it's really getting patients to the services. So it's really a wider service we provide. And I'll share a leaflet with Dr. Kingsley, who will be able to send it to you specific on your email. Today, Linda Panton is here and Claire Chambers. They are specialists in HIV and sexual health. So feel free to interact. And I know when I was speaking to Dr. Kingsley, this is more known to the whole community that the organization does serve. It's mainly making sure we are reaching out and providing information that is relevant to the community. So I don't want to take much time. I will ask Kingsley to invite Linda and Claire to share the information with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Linda Anthony is the HIV nurse lead at my chambers, also another HIV nurse lead. So I'm going to call them forth and they're going to give a presentation. So please come on. Thank you.
Thank you. Because I need to introduce you first. I don't really know if I need this mic. Is it working anyway?
Oh, shit.
Okay. Sometimes I get streamed by that's anything. We didn't really quite know what to put in a presentation. We didn't know how many people were coming, and I think we might overlap a little bit in what we're saying. So we just want to, we'll give you an overview, really. Both of us work as HIV nurse specialists. There's two therapists that look after people living with HIV in Edinburgh. I work at the infectious disease unit. I've been there since 1993, so I've been there since, people didn't get there, people didn't exist. So I have seen a lot of changes, and I'll pass it to Claire. So I'm also a clinical nurse specialist, but I'm the lead HIV nurse for the Chalmers Centre, although I have had the pleasure with working in infectious diseases with Linda for a long time too. So thanks for coming along and allowing us to share your space. Next slide, thanks. So some of these slides are quite a lot of time Claire and I spend, particularly in this week, running up to World AIDS Day. We have a kind of HIV awareness week. And, stigma was mentioned earlier, and we're aware that there's still a lot of stigma in healthcare. So we spend quite a lot of time trying to educate our peers that are working in healthcare and also the general public. So we put stalls up in the hospitals. So some of these slides are just really the basic facts, because, there was lots of campaigns in Scotland way back in the early 80s. And they were quite frightening, and actually there's not really been any education since then to change people's perception and ideas about HIV. So these things probably seem really quite simple to you, but actually it's incredible how many people have got the wrong perception of how people can pass on HIV. There are people that still think that you can get HIV from kissing or hugging or sharing cutlery. And I have an example of one of my African ladies who was told by their GP not that many years ago, sadly, that she shouldn't really have her grandchildren at the moment. She was just newly diagnosed, but the GP felt that she was a transmission risk to her grandchildren, and that's quite scary. That was a GP that was happening to you. So a lot of us, and doctors as well, we spend a lot of time trying to kind of make sure that everybody working in GP surgeries and around hospitals are up to date with their knowledge about HIV. Next slide, please. And so that's really what we're also trying to do, is to try and get people to kind of go for testing so that you're aware of your diagnosis, because it's so much easier, nowadays. The treatments are much more tolerable, and so the earlier you get on treatment, the better that your life can be, and you can live much healthier. We also used to talk a lot about risk groups as well, and actually both Claire and I look after people in clinic, and an awful lot of them have no idea how they acquired HIV, and that is what we want to try and get across to GPs, because anybody that is sitting in their surgery could be living with HIV. HIV is passed on sexually. Anybody who's having sex can get HIV, and so if we can try and change that perception of being a guy who injects drugs or a man who has sex with men, just because that's why people aren't tested. So we do a lot of that as well. Next slide. Thanks. This has probably been covered. We just wanted to do a little bit about the global picture and the local picture. So as you can see, despite treatment, it is quite sad, the figures that are still around in 2023. We're still getting, that's a huge amount of deaths that are unnecessary. The WHO target, so for 2025, which is not that long away, we want 95% of people in the world to know about their diagnosis. 95% of them to be on therapy, because therapy does exist in all these countries, and 95% of them to reach an undetectable viral load. And what that means is that your virus in your body is at such a low level that it will not do any damage to your immune system, and it also means that you will not pass it on to anybody else. So as you can see in 2023 there's still quite a bit to go. Next slide, thanks. And that's the UK figures. So probably that was mentioned earlier, there's now a higher number of people that were getting newly diagnosed in the UK are actually aware of the diagnosis. So after COVID, you know, there was lots less movement, people weren't coming into the country. We now see it around the UK, I'm certainly in Edinburgh as well, that the majority of people who have come into our centre already know the diagnosis and are on therapy, which is great. Next slide, thanks. And so Logan, local. So between the two centres, Claire and I look after nearly 7,000 people living with HIV, and that's in Scotland. And then in Logan itself, we've got about 1,700, I would say. Yeah, and they're equal. What people do now to decide what centre they go to tends to be just geographical, what areas closer. So the infectious region is basically Western General. And the sexual health centre is kind of more in town, based Chandler's Centre. Last year we had 16 new diagnoses, so it's certainly tailed off compared to what it was, but 16 new diagnoses is still 16 too many. And looking at the targets, we have got in Scotland 93% aware of the diagnosis, 95% in treatment, and the treatments are effective, so 97% are undetectable. Next slide. There is a group that is funded by the Scottish Government, and it's about ending transmission in Scotland by 2030. There's quite a lot of people, it's a multidisciplinary group, but that's really our aim. So we want people to just transmission to just go. You know, and the way we do that is to get people tested. So there's lots of work being done around the UK for opt-out testing in A&Es. There was a project done at the beginning of the year in Edinburgh. It didn't last that long, really. Again, it's to do with funding. But there was no new HIV diagnosis. So Edinburgh is now considered a low prevalence area. But that's one way of trying to get people tested and aware of the diagnosis that haven't been before. The third point is probably the most important to Claire and I. I mean, we've mentioned it before, we're well aware that stigma exists, and that is what puts the majority of people off testing, I would say. Next slide, thanks. To get to those targets by 2030, basically, we need to get people tested and on treatment, because treatment is really effective. It's a lot more tolerable than it was many years ago. It's taken 1 or 2 tablets once a day. The U equals U campaign, I don't know, has anybody ever seen U equals U in GPs or anything like that? So that means undetectable equals untransmittable. That's what I was saying earlier, that once you're on therapy and you're undetectable, there is no risk of passing on to your sexual partners. And that message was really important, actually, because I think that did allow more people to get tested. And it means that people can have sexual relationships, it means they can have families. And so for a lot of our females who used to test positive, that was their biggest fear, was that they weren't allowed to have families. Whereas now, you can, as long as you're on treatment, you can have a healthy pregnancy and your baby will be delivered and the baby will not be available with HIV. We talked about increased testing and opt-out testing, and the next one is PrEP. And the Sexual Health Clinic does PrEP in Edinburgh, so I'll hand you over to Claire for this thing. Okay, so has anyone heard of PrEP? Does anyone know what it actually is? Okay, yeah. So Chalmers provides PrEP, obviously free of charge on the NHS, and it's basically an antiviral medication that you can take to stop you from getting HIV should you meet it. Our issues in NHS Lothian is at the moment we don't feel that we're getting PrEP to the communities that we should be. So we're very keen if anyone contacts us and wants to go on PrEP, we will see you very quickly. There is a waiting list for PrEP at the moment, but it's sort of done on a person by person approach. So if we feel that someone is at higher risk of contracting HIV, the chances are we would start them on PrEP relatively quickly. The other thing to say about it is if you didn't want to receive it from the NHS, lots of people choose to just buy it themselves online. And there are various different websites, the main one being I Want PrEP Now, which is, I think it's about £30 a month. You can source it yourself and then perhaps get your GP involved with just checking your kidney function once or twice a year. So it's for people who aren't living with HIV. So one of the most important things about PrEP is that we test you for HIV and all sexually transmitted infections before you start it. So it can only be given to people who are not living with HIV. Next slide, please. So just to explain a little bit about yeah, so we've gone over that. So can I have the next slide? So this is just a little bit about how PrEP can be taken. So this is event-based PrEP when it's in a period of inserted vaginal anal sex happening several times. So all you have to do is take 2 pills at least 2 hours before you have sex, and then you would have to take it for 24 hours after stopping, okay? And that would essentially prevent HIV transmission. So very simple. This is for a man, okay? Men only. If you were female, if you could go on to the next slide, please. You would take the same again. You would take 2 pills at least 2 hours before the sex happens, but you would need to continue that for 7 days after. Okay, so that's what we call event-based dosing, but some people can get a little bit mixed up with tablets. I know that lots of people do. So some people just decide to take PrEP all the time. So as long as they double up their dose, they just take that pill every single day for however long they wish. So it's a little bit like the contraceptive pill. That's what I say, because it's essentially a pill that you take every day that is going to stop you from getting something that you don't want. So obviously we take the contraceptive pill not to get pregnant. For women, you could take PrEP knowing that if you were to meet HIV through sexual contact, HIV would not be transmitted. So we know that, and we also know that the side effects with PrEP are extremely low. Most of our patients, we have hundreds of patients on PrEP now in NHS Lothian, and most of them don't report any side effects at all. If there's going to be side effects, the first couple of weeks might be a little bit nausea, but generally it's exceptionally well tolerated. So it's free, it is there. If anyone is interested, or if anyone, family members or anyone that they think would be interested in PrEP, please get in contact with us at Chalmers and we could have a further discussion about that. The next slide, please. Okay, I'm just going to pass over to Linda now. That's so this really kind of summarises what Claire and I do. So we're the first point of contact for any new diagnosis. So if somebody's been given a diagnosis at the GP, if somebody's been diagnosed in a ward, then they will contact us. And as I said earlier, we'll first of all decide what is the nearest centre, because the only way you'll get by when somebody comes to clinic is if they haven't completely crossed the other side of the town. And then once we get them in, we do the first initial consultation, and that is a whole range of bloods. to see how much virus the person's got, to see how their immune system is doing. We looked for whether they have hepatitis A or B or C before. We do lots of vaccinations. We talk about vaccinations a lot, but it's to keep you as healthy as possible. We encourage you to go for COVID vaccines. We encourage you to have flu vaccines. And we kind of do a multidisciplinary, holistic approach. And Claire and I now have our own caseload. So a lot of HIV care is now run by nurses. We can lead on it for people who are really stable, who, you know, are well established on their medication. And that kind of makes it easier because we're in the clinic more often. We have mobiles, so it's quite easy for people to text us. Although a lot of time they text us to say they can't come. So, but the psychological service is something I want to touch on because earlier talks. Now, between the two centres, we have a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and 3 mental health nurses. So we are actually very lucky that we have that is funded. A lot of HIV centres in the UK do not have that. And it ties in a little bit with stigma. The way Claire and I ask somebody is, how is your mental well-being? Because stigma actually exists quite a lot within themselves. There's a lot of self-stigma within our patient cohort. And a lot of the times, and again, this is very much, I would say, amongst Black Africans, they do not like to consider themselves that they have mental health issues. So one way around that is we've changed the language quite a bit, and we talk about mental well-being, and it's about trying to be a bit more positive about it. And we probably try and go around it, like sleep is one of the main problems, we would say. Sometimes with antivirals, that can be one of the side effects, but actually a lot of people just with worry about living with HIV, and perhaps they haven't told family, partner yet, they kind of aren't sleeping, and that can lead to kind of much more kind of mental health issues further down the line. So our team probably see a lot of people just to try and tackle sleep problems. But, you know, we spend a lot of time helping people actually share the diagnosis with family members or partners, because it can be really difficult. And then we kind of we are the point of contact, so if they've got any problems at all. And the third sector support services there, we have got positive help. They have got a group that children can go for homework support. They have got volunteer drivers, so they bring our patients to the clinic. Sometimes they do a bit of gardening, a bit decorating, care, and they do a bit of support in the community. They've also got support groups as well. They do peer support. And that's not for everybody. A lot of people come into our clinics and don't speak about HIV to anybody else. So they kind of come in, offload to us, and we offer mental health support. We offer volunteer groups. But actually, for a lot of people, they don't want it. They want to just come in, get their bloods checked, be told that they're okay, and off they go. And I suppose that's just another plug for how it is much more straightforward than it used to be, but we just need people to be tested and be aware of their diagnosis and get on treatment. So I think probably next time, I think that's probably all we really wanted to say. You know, it is quite sad for Claire and I, who have worked in HIV for such a long time, that we know all the treatments work, but we have still people who are diagnosed at a very late stage, and can end up being in hospital for a very long time until they get stabilised, and that's not really, there's no need for that in this day and age. And unfortunately, yeah, stigma is the biggest barrier we've got to try and change attitudes, and that does include in healthcare, so that we can get to 2030 and stop any more transmissions. I think that's it, but we're open to any questions. My question is, Around the UK, where is the highest rate of HIV infection? And also, would you consider the use of condom to be effective prevention against HIV transmission?
Yeah, thanks. The big centres, so London, Birmingham, Manchester, are probably the main, the centres that have the highest prevalence still around the UK, I would say. And condoms, yeah, I mean, both centres we give out free condoms because, you know, the condom message is a good point, it's often forgotten. And the UK's message that you can't pass HIV on if you're undetectable has stopped a lot of condom use because they know they can't transmit it. But what that means is that unfortunately we've seen a huge rise in infection in STI, sexually transmitted infections, because people tend to not use condoms. But condoms is the easiest way of not passing on the HIV. Yeah.
Risk of resistance taking PrEP.
It's a risk of taking PrEP and missing
Of drug resistance, I think, taking
drug
PrEP.
resistance. It's what you could, but not because it's just one drug.
Yeah, I mean, it's one sort of type of drug. And if you're taking it properly, if you were, do you mean if you were taking PrEP and you were to have sex with someone that had HIV, you would be worried that they may transmit a resistant virus to you? Is that? It's not commonly reported. It's not something that we found to be a problem since PrEP, you know, came into Scotland around about 3 years ago. Certainly not anything that I have dealt with in clinic or so far. I think the biggest problem is when people start PrEP and they get PrEP fatigue. So a little bit like when people take the pill and they just stop taking it. So people stop taking PrEP, but they've sort of lost sight of the fact that they need to take it to prevent HIV. And sometimes we get diagnosis now of people that have been taking PrEP for a long time and just stopped taking it, you know, for say a month, just because they've not thought about it, and then you would potentially get an HIV diagnosis. But from a resistance point of view, we don't see much in this country because the antiretrovirals are also, what's the word I'm looking for, extremely, yeah, they have a really high barrier to resistance. So it's not as much of an issue in this country as it was a long time ago when antiretrovirals first came out. We don't see a lot of resistance viruses.
So in terms of stigma reduction, are there, from your experience, are there certain strategies that you found to be effective in terms of reducing stigma?
So last year, Linda and we had a lot more staff. There's been lots of problems in NHS Lothian just with staffing, as it is everywhere else in the UK. So we did a week project where Linda targeted the Western General Hospital, I targeted the Royal Infirmary, and I had a couple of colleagues that targeted St John's. And we basically had a huge HIV awareness campaign within the hospitals, which involved us speaking at huddles to all the sort of senior members of staff, going around the whole hospital, speaking to staff on the wards, giving out red ribbons, giving them placards saying undetectable viral load equals untransmittable, because obviously that's the most important message. Yes. So we do things like that, and if we hear of anything, any of our patients report things to us, when they're being looked after in different parts of NHS Lothian, we may have to go and do an education session with a ward. If we felt that there's been a stigma-related incident happen, we actually take that quite seriously, and one of us are quite keen, quick to act on that.
Thank you very much. Let me ask you again. Thank you for that very interesting presentation. So we're getting towards the end. Say the bottom part is the sweetest part. So I want to thank all of you for making it, and Leith Pattern, the chambers from the NHS. Thank you so much. Jonathan, good friends, as well as Smith Grant from Merit, good friend as well, known for quite a long time. Thank you so much for making it. Dr. Motolani, Sunday, welcome. Thank you for supporting as well. Lovina and our model as well, helping with the creative industry. Let's put our hands together. So the National AIDS Trust as well, we also partners with the National AIDS Trust. There's some publication at the back about mental health and HIV. Can take one, like Waverly Care. Thank you so much. Mehis, and then the African Scottish Development Organization, Holy Ghost Chapel, all the other organizations, you're all appreciated. Thank you so much. So this has been a wonderful World AIDS Day seminar, and we've looked at some of the progress that has been made, some of the challenges that are still there. The work is still not yet over, but I believe that working together and with a unified front, learning from each other's experience, we can be able to help to tackle HIV and ultimately eliminate it in Scotland and globally. Thank you very much. There are refreshments at the back. Thank you so much. And thanks for all of you online as well. You're highly appreciated. Also appreciate Mongolia Identity and the Community Fund. God bless. Thank you so much. So Una, the leader of the Mongol Identity, thank you so much. And every other person that is online, Ruth, James, Joshua, Favor, you're all highly appreciated. Thank you so much.